Hello, everyone. Here's what's coming up on the world today. U.S. Congress watches never-before-seen graphic videos of the attack on the Capitol building on January 6th at the Trump impeachment trial. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced sanctions on Myanmar's coup leaders. Plus, Belarus's President Alexander Lukashenko says he has too much power, promises early votes and constitutional reforms. Welcome to the program. I'm Akaite Afia. Apart from referring to the former U.S. President Donald Trump as insider-in-chief, U.S. senators at the impeachment trial got to watch some very graphic videos of the attacks on the Capitol building on January 6th. The previously unreleased security footage revealed how rioters, including some in body armor, violently breached the building and sought out those who had gathered to certify the election result.
On day 2 of Donald Trump's Senate impeachment trial, Democratic lawmakers laid out their evidence that the former president incited an insurrection by exhorting thousands of supporters to march on the Capitol last month.
And was not remotely
Lead impeachment manager, Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin, warned that his team would show videos of the Capitol assault that would include scenes of shocking violence and bloodshed against police officers.
The evidence will show you that ex-President Trump was no innocent bystander. The evidence will show that he clearly incited the January 6th insurrection. It will show that Donald Trump surrendered his role as commander-in-chief and became the inciter-in-chief of a dangerous insurrection.
Previously on-scene videos showed the view from inside the Capitol as rioters smashed windows and fought with police on January the 6th, coming within 100 feet of the room where then Vice President Mike Pence was sheltering with his family.
You can see Vice President Pence and his family quickly move down the stairs. The Vice President turns around briefly as he's headed down. As Pence was being evacuated, rioters started to spread throughout the Capitol. Those inside helped other rioters break in through doors in several locations around this entire building. And the mob was looking for Vice President Pence.
Pence oversaw the formal certification of President Joe Biden's victory during the January 6 proceedings at the Capitol, despite pressure from Mr. Trump to halt the process. Other videos demonstrated how close the mob came to lawmakers, with one video showing House members passing by a police officer who was holding a member of the mob at gunpoint.
In this security footage video, you can see them exiting. Many members are still wearing their gas masks. They walk just feet away from where Capitol Police are holding an insurrectionist at gunpoint. Just minutes earlier, that insurrectionist had tried to open the gallery door and thankfully was stopped by a tactical team.
Another video showed a startling image from a police officer's body camera that showed a crowd assaulting him with a hockey stick and a flag at the entrance to the Capitol building. In one clip, Republican Senator, an outspoken critic of Mr. Trump, Mitt Romney, was seen walking towards the rioters before being ushered to safety by a Capitol police officer. Impeachment managers also used social media posts and clips of Mr. Trump to illustrate how he spent weeks pushing the narrative that the election had been stolen from him and with his reaction to the attack.
When he wanted to incite his supporters to show up on January 6th, President Trump tweeted 16 times between midnight on January 5th and his noon rally speech the next day. 16 times to get them to do something he wanted. And his message in those 16 times was clear. Fight, stay strong, be strong. But when the violence started, he never once said the one thing everyone around him was begging him to say. Stop. stop the attack. He refused to stop it.
Democrats will continue to argue their case for conviction today before Mr. Trump's team takes to the stand in his defense. They have already argued the trial is politically motivated and unconstitutional, and that he did not encourage violence.
Well, the VOA's congressional correspondent, Catherine Gibson, is joining us now from Washington. Catherine, it's great to see you.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
So talk to us about how Congress reacted to those previously unreleased videos that were shown yesterday.
Right. I mean, that was really an intense moment in the Senate chamber yesterday. All of the reporters on Capitol Hill actually got email warnings ahead of time that they were going to be seeing incredibly graphic video. And I don't think that that was underestimated in that warning. You know, here in the United States, we have seen hours upon hours of footage of that Capitol riot. But until yesterday, we had not seen some of the deepest, most important video from that day when we saw Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer literally running from the mob, running away from them with a security detail. Vice President Mike Pence being hustled out minutes away from the rioters. The U.S. lawmakers were only a matter of steps away. And I don't think that that had really sunk in here in the United States until that video was shown yesterday. Many U.S. senators looking visibly moved, visibly upset. And that includes a lot of Republicans who have said that they are going to vote to acquit Donald Trump. They were watching the video quite intently as well and possibly changing their minds about what happened on that day.
Well, some of those videos were quite graphic, and I do know that some people who were watching the proceedings live on Wednesday actually gasped in disbelief. So what are some of the reactions that Americans have given regarding the footage, especially from supporters of the former president?
That's a really interesting question because the supporters of the president feel that he is not directly responsible for the violence. Many of the president's supporters and many Republicans in this country will tell you that they abhor what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, that absolutely law enforcement officers should never, ever been attacked in that matter. What they do argue next, and what I have seen even after these videos were released, is that President Trump was not directly responsible for that violence, is that you cannot convict the president saying that he was solely and directly responsible the way the House impeachment managers have been saying. They spent a lot of time yesterday making hours upon hours of a case showing that President Trump had been inciting violence, not just on January 6th, but for the months leading up to that rally, both before and after the U.S. election, telling his supporters that they needed to fight to overturn the democratic process. The key question here is, will 17 Republican senators believe the Democrats' case?
Well, we'll definitely be watching to see if they will believe the Democrats' case. But take us inside the Senate today and the tone of day 3 as the Trump impeachment trial. Like, what tone will it be taking today?
Right. So this is the last day that House impeachment managers have to make their case against former President Donald Trump. We're being told that they're going to be continuing with their case of the president's actions after the rally. They're saying that that's just as important as what happened before and during the rally. He did not send in the National Guard to help the U.S. Congress, his own vice president, lawmakers. He tweeted things in support of his supporters, telling them that he loved them, that they were good people. He basically proved out in the open that he supported this violence. They're going to be hammering that point in to close their case and to try to reach those Republicans.
All right. Well, Catherine, thanks again for joining us and giving us some more clarity on the situation there. Do stay safe.
Thank you. You're so welcome.
Europe's oldest person, Sister Andre, marks her 117th birthday in France with a special mass, a video call with family, and a feast of foie gras, capé filon, and baked Alaska. Her careers has worried that she would not survive her birthday after she contracted the coronavirus recently. Sister Andre herself did not realize that she actually had contracted the coronavirus at her retirement home in Toulon, France. 81 people were also infected, 10 of whom died. But Sister Andre lives to see year 117 and hopefully 118. Meanwhile, the total number of global coronavirus cases grows beyond 107 million and deaths beyond 2.3 million. Here's the global update.
The World Health Organization says there has been a lot of open, transparent discussions in the joint work of the World Health Organization experts and Chinese scientists in Wuhan. This came from a member of the investigating team following the conclusion of investigation by a joint WHO-China experts team on the origins of the coronavirus. Peter Daszak, a zoologist, a member of the team, who spoke highly of the conduct of the Chinese scientists that collected samples at the Yunnan seafood wholesale market, a place associated with the earliest COVID-19 outbreak in China. Meanwhile, the African Union Center for Disease Control says it is not walking away from the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine after trial data showed it had greatly reduced efficacy against the variants dominant in South Africa. African countries are due to receive 100 million doses of the AstraZeneca shots this year under an AU vaccine plan. South Africa paused the rollout of the vaccine to health workers and says it could seek to sell or swap doses of the vaccine. Over in Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel has called on citizens to be a little more patient after agreeing with regional leaders to extend the coronavirus lockdown until March 7th, saying restrictions would not be kept for a day longer than necessary. She was addressing the Bundestag lower house of parliament, where she also mentioned that the extension was needed to avoid a third wave of coronavirus due to the risk posed by new variants of the virus. Coronavirus infections are falling in Spain, though many hospitals are still operating under much pressure. The country is ebbing, with a 14-day infection day falling to 630 per 100,000 people on Tuesday, compared to around 900 in late January. Finally, health authorities in Australia's Victoria state have ramped up contact tracing and prepared for more mass testing of residents in Melbourne after a new COVID-19 cluster linked to a quarantine hotel grew to 10 cases today. More than 22,500 test results have been conducted in the last 24 hours in the country's second most populous city, and authorities are calling on residents to get tested amid fears of community transmission from a worker at the Holiday Inn in the city.
Instagram has removed the account of the nephew of late President John F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy is said to have been making false claims about coronavirus and vaccines. Mr. Kennedy, a lawyer and environmentalist, is the son of late former U.S. Attorney General, Senator, and presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy. He chairs Children's Health Defense, a group that expresses skepticism about the health benefits of vaccines. He also campaigned against the immunization of measles during a resurgence of the infection. Still to come on The World Today. Well, we have been saying it, Valentine's Day will be really different this year, but check out the spin hopeless romantics are putting on love during a pandemic. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching The World Today on Channels Television. The United States has announced sanctions on Myanmar's coup leaders, their family members, and businesses linked to them. Now, this follows U.S. President Joe Biden's approval of an executive order regarding the matter. The sanctions come as a woman shot in the head during anti-coup protests battles for her life in the hospital. Meanwhile, the military junta is calling for civil servants to return to work.
Welcome their helpful insights. As you know, the assault on Burma's transition to democracy remains an issue of deep bipartisan concern. We've consulted at length, for example, with Senator McConnell, who has had a very keen interest in this, and his team, and we welcome their helpful insights. We've also been in close contact with our allies and partners around the world, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, driving vigorous diplomatic outreach to help coordinate an international response to what happened. The strong and unified message emerging from the United States has been essential, in our view, to encouraging other countries to join us in pressing for immediate return to democracy. Last week, the United States helped bring together the UN Security Council, which issued a strong statement in support of Burmese democracy. And this week, we will use our renewed engagement on the Human Rights Council to strengthen the world's commitment to human rights in Burma. Today, I again call on the Burmese military to immediately release the democratic political leaders and activists and they're now detained, including Aung San Suu Kyi, and also Win Myint, the president. The military must relinquish power it seized and demonstrate respect for the will of the people of Burma, as expressed in their November 8th election. So today, I'm announcing a series of actions that we're taking to begin imposing consequences on the leaders of the coup.
Well, moving away from the United States, authorities in India are intensifying drilling inside a tunnel in the Himalayas in an attempt to rescue more than 35 workers believed to be trapped there after a flash flood that destroyed dams and bridges. About 171 people remain unaccounted for since Sunday's disaster in Uttarakhand state, most of them workers at the Tapovan Vingshugad hydroelectric project and at the smaller Rishinganja Dam, which was swept away by the torrent. The police say so far the bodies of 33 people have been found, while scores are thought to have been washed away as rock and debris surged down the Dualinganga River. Rescue efforts have been focused on saving an estimated 35 workers stuck in a 2.5-kilometer tunnel connected to the Tapovan project.
This has happened due to unjust.
Meanwhile, environment experts say rampant construction, rock blasting, and climate change have disturbed the fragile ecology and geology of the Himalayan terrain, resulting in disasters like the recent avalanche that destroyed dams, bridges, and killed at least 35 people. While the disaster fallout is yet to be analyzed, environmentalists believe the construction of the hydroelectric projects in the Himalayas can bring a catastrophe of much larger magnitude. Nepal has banned 2 Indian climbers and their team leader for 6 years from mountaineering in the country after an investigation found that they had faked their 2016 climb up Mount Everest. Narendra Singh Yadav and Seema Rani Goswami's climb was certified by the tourism department at that time. The action against them came when they failed to produce any evidence after Mr. Yadav was nominated for an award. Mr. Yadav and Ms. Goswami are yet to comment on Wednesday's announcement. Indians first summited Everest in the 1960s and in 1984. Bashrendi Pal became the first Indian woman to climb the mountain. Indians have also set records for the first twins, the first female amputee, the youngest girl ever, and the oldest woman ever to ascend the peak. Austria's finance minister, Gernot Blumel, a close party ally of Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, says his home was searched by anti-corruption prosecutors, treating him as a suspect in relation to possible party donations. Prosecutors are investigating whether under a previous coalition between Kurz's conservatives and the far-right Freedom Party, a deal was struck between government officials and gambling firm Novomatic to appoint a board member at Casinos Austria in exchange for granting Novomatic gambling licenses. In a written statement, Blumel says, quote, "We would never and never did accept donations from gambling firms, especially if in addition something were expected in exchange," adding that no donation from Novomatic had been accepted. Novomatic has also denied making donations to any party. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko says his position wields too much power. It's a change from his position over last month as mass protests hold across the country, calling for him to step down. During a national broadcast, he promised constitutional reforms that would be prepared this year and put in a vote in early 2022. His address was made at a People's Assembly of 2,700 delegates to debate political reform, which his opponents have dismissed as a sham exercise to allow him to cling to power after months of protests since a contested election last August. Lukashenko has ruled Belarus since 1994, but has faced street protests since a presidential election last August that the opposition says was rigged to enable him to win. Mass arrests and a crackdown on the protests prompted new Western sanctions, but Lukashenko has remained president, thanks to diplomatic and financial support from Russia, which sees the former Soviet republic as a buffer state against NATO. British government minister Michael Gove today told lawmakers that the country and the European Union can resolve some of the issues disrupting trade in the near future. He made the comments while answering questions in Parliament hours before talks with European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic. Gove said he would be seeking to ensure light-touch border processes for trade with Northern Ireland after weeks of post-Brexit disruption to trading with the province.
Could I please ask for... Following my conversation with Vice President Maros Sefcovic last week, we've continued to work intensively to find solutions to outstanding issues which have to be addressed through the Joint Committee. I've taken forward our continued engagement in that constructive spirit, and I look forward to speaking to Vice President Sefcovic later today. Well, it is the case that the protocol that was negotiated as part of the withdrawal agreement is there to ensure unfettered access for goods from Northern Ireland to Great Britain, but it's also the case that the protocol ensures that we can play our part generously in supporting the maintenance of the EU single market by ensuring that there are processes. Those processes should be as light touch as possible, and that's the aim of the conversations that I'm having with Vice President Sefcovic.
By now, many stores across the world are brimming with merchandise to mark Valentine's Day on Sunday, but some are putting a little more thought into the circumstances surrounding this year's celebration. With gags about face masks, temperature checks, and social distancing, pandemic-inspired cards feature among the traditional romantic offerings this year as couples in Britain prepare for Valentine's Day under lockdown. Designs on greeting card company sites like Thoughtful and Moonpig include depictions of socially distanced couples in hazmat suits, a mask-wearing heart, or a couple long used to lockdown at home. While one card asks, "Will you be my quarantine?"
I designed a card with COVID and the situation we're currently in mind. It is a running joke in our house about digital thermometers and saying how hot you are, which obviously translates very well for Valentine's Day. And as a fan of a pun, I thought, well, if you are hot, you would have to isolate. But for Valentine's Day, it would be better to isolate. And that's where the idea came from. So I drew a digital thermometer, and rather than a temperature appearing on the gauge, there was a love heart. I think it's thinking things that you think are probably unique to you and your friend is actually something that so many people relate to. But I think that's how I personally go about it. I need to think of one person, and then hopefully it translates to the masses. Fingers crossed.
Well, "Will You Be My Quarantine" is actually pretty cute, but that is all we have for the program today. I'm Akaite Afia. Have a great evening and stay safe.